What do power tools, caustic chemicals, firearms, and 12-ton jacks have in common? Well, for one thing, you wouldn't want to try to bring them on an airplane. The other thing they have in common is that we used these items to put poly and Trivex lenses through their paces to see how they would perform in some real-world, ordinary and extraordinary circumstances. Before you go saying, I know all about poly and Trivex, I think you're going to be surprised. Why would I say that I believe that you might be surprised? Well, because I was. I was genuinely shocked at the outcome of some of the tests that you're about to see. Now, 3 disclaimers before we get started. Disclaimer number 1, I have no vested interest in the outcome of these tests. I work for a wholesale optical lab, not an optical lens material manufacturer. Disclaimer number 2, I don't care which one of these materials you use. Look, that's up to you. This is not poly versus Trivex. This is simply a comparison of the performance of the 2 materials because they're often mentioned kind of in the same light. Disclaimer number 3, and this is the biggie. These are not scientific tests. As you can clearly see, this is my garage. This is not an engineering laboratory. However, we did do the very best that we could working with what we have. Everywhere possible, I used common, ordinary stock lenses, exactly like the ones that may very well be sitting on the shelf behind you right this minute and that you sell every single day. So watch this through, and as I said, I think you might be surprised. Trivex has a specific gravity of 1.11, poly 1.20, meaning that a lens made of Trivex, everything else being equal, same script, same size, should weigh less than those made of polycarbonate. Let's find out if that's true. I've got 4 lenses here, 2 Trivex, 2 poly, 2 different manufacturers. I've got a super accurate scale here, and let's just take a look at what a couple of common items weigh. There's a block, that's 1.985 or 2 grams there. A leap pad, that's a 0.23, and a PD stick. PD stick weighs 5.35 grams. These are all 70 millimeter blanks, or cut down to 70 millimeter blanks. They're all -3, they're all spherical, they're all hard coated, no other bells or whistles. So I did the best I can to kind of keep this real world. Let's see what that weighs. All right, our first Trivex is 13.555. Our second Trivex is 13.81. Our first poly is 13.64. And our last poly is 14.0. So we've got roughly about half a gram difference. We're talking about the weight of 2 leap pads. I don't think anybody out there is going to notice a difference in weight between a Trivex and a poly in these mid-range bread and butter kinds of prescriptions. Here are the numbers as they came in. Our winner was a Trivex, that was the lightest. Then came a poly, not Trivex, Trivex. Trivex, poly, Trivex, poly. Between the high and the low, there's less than half a gram difference. And remember that we're talking about full-size blanks here, which is not what we're putting on our customer, but this little tiny piece of the larger blank. So you can imagine that that really becomes pretty negligible. Industry belief is that polycarbonate Does have a tendency to have some chemical problems, particularly acetone. We're always told that it will craze the lens and cause some problems. Did some online research, found this wonderful article about chemical resistance. And as I read through the article, they had a picture of this poly lens that was all milky and white and destroyed. And I read closer and it said that it had been in the acetone for 10 days. I guess that's like leaving your tint tank on over the weekend or something. We didn't go for 10 days, we went for 10 minutes. Let's see what happened. I'll give you a little bit better close-up of this, but what I did was edge these lenses so that there's plenty of exposed raw material to work with for the chemical to get into. Actually even drilled some holes in there for added contact. What I've used is some hardware grade acetone mixed with some good old-fashioned nail polish remover, kind of a 50-50 mix there, and some 91% isopropyl alcohol. All right, I guess it is time to dump these into the drink. We'll go Trivex, Poly, Trivex, Poly, and we will start our timer. About ready to pull these out. I'm going to hit them with some lens cleaner. All right, let's see what we have got here. We have our Trivex lens that was in acetone for 10 minutes. I see no ill effects there at all. Alcohol, Trivex, no real ill effects there. And our polycarbonate in alcohol, I see no ill effects there. But we are going to take a closer look at our poly here. I think that may have suffered a little bit. Okay, to me it doesn't even sound quite right. It sounds like it's softening a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. Like I said, I'll take some close-ups for you. You can't, obviously, you can't feel it, but all the edges here are kind of rolling. There's some degradation there. You know, yeah, the poly lens, it sure did. It started to break down after 15 minutes in the acetone with all that exposed edge. In the real world, what are we going to do? We're going to put a little acetone on the dab on a cloth and clean off some lens markings or something. That's going to be on the scratch coating. It's not going to be on the raw surface. So, you know, who can say? Doesn't mean that, you know, down the road that these chemicals may have an effect on the lens, but obviously we're not testing that. We are taught the higher the Abbe value, the better the optics of the lens, or less prone to chromatic aberration that it will be. Trivex is in the 40s, depending on the manufacturer. Polycarbonate in the 30s, depending on who's making the lens. All things considered, we should have better optics in a Trivex lens than a poly. I think we may actually have caught the very concept of Abbe, which is really kind of cool. Here are the results. Here's a contraocular view with, for the lack of a better term, no vertex at all. Here's a contraocular view with about 3/4 of an inch of vertex. Here is a contraocular view with about 1.5 inches of vertex. Here is an ocular view with no vertex. Here's an ocular view with about 3/4 of an inch of vertex. And here is where things get interesting. This is an ocular view with about 1.5 inches of vertex. Look closely and you can actually see some color dispersion at the periphery of each lens. I'll let you decide how much you think you see. This one for me was kind of inconclusive. I think I see a little bit more of color dispersion, a wider range of color in the poly lens periphery than I do on the Trivex. I can't really say for sure. And I think that the optics are a little bit clearer. It seems like you can see a crisper letter out a little bit further in the Trivex than you can in the poly, but I will let you decide that one. Tensile strength is, if you ever played tug of war with your dog, you've got the rope and the force between your hand and the dog's mouth. That's tensile strength. It's a pulling force. We ran this test in two ways. We did a pull test and sort of a push test as well, if you will. Trivex is a stronger tensile strength. It comes in at 61.2, Poly 44.9. Trivex lens should be stronger in the tensile strength pull. Let's find out if that's true. All right, this is actually test number 3 for tensile strength. And these lenses are starting to get a little bit distorted. This is test 3 because the first test I actually broke the cable. That cable was rated for 96 pounds and it broke before the lens did. Then I went to a 3/32 cable and the cable actually pulled out of the ferrule before the lens broke. So I'm going to give this one more try. If I have a cable failure either in the cable itself or the ferrule, we're just going to call it lost cause. But let's give this one more try with our 12-ton jack and see if we can get one of these two lenses to actually break for us. I would say we have a winner, and the winner is actually Trivex. All right, and polycarbonate is still to go. Let's see what we can do with that. And we pulled the cable again, so there is our test result for tensile strength. Our Trivex lens broke before our polycarbonate did. We had posted on social media, asked for some feedback, suggestions for other tests and other things that we could do during this series. One thing that came up was if tensile strength can be a pulling force, then in a way, tensile strength could also be a pushing force. And in particular, people were interested in the old story about leaving your glasses on the dashboard of a car. I went out and shot the dashboard of my car, windows up, August, South Carolina, bright sunshine. I got about 195 degrees. Somebody else insisted that that can get up to 300. So I kind of shot for around the 250 mark. Let's see what happens. And once again, the results here are kind of startling. Here's the setup. What I did was try to replicate an old style 3-piece mount. I went a step further. I drilled through the lens and actually tapped the hole. So this is actually threaded through, leaving even less room for expansion and contraction than an open hole would. I've got a washer, nut, snugged everything down. And the assumption is, of course, that everything here is going to expand and contract at a different rate. So let's pop this into the oven. And what I'm doing, I'm just, maintaining the temperature, building up real nice and slow from the 100, 150, 200. And then the magic moment appears. I'm hitting the 280 mark there, 270s, 265. And this is where things started to get really interesting. And yes, those are a couple of melted lenses. Just to add insult to injury, I took those out of the almost 300-degree oven and plunged them into some nice ice water. And regardless of how bad that lens looks, nothing really bad happened at the insertion point. I'm sure that nut, bolt, and washer all were expanding and contracting at different rates, but did not crack near that area. Last thing I did is really grabbed a hold of that and yanked it around. There's no inherent weakness there even. There's some nice close-up shots. Again, wow, that's one ugly looking pair of glasses if you left them on your dashboard. But what we're really concerned about is obviously there's no cracking, no crazing, no splinters. Just your Trivex, no cracks, no splinters. For tensile strength, I think it's pretty clear that either one of these materials is going to make a fine choice for a drill mount frame. I shot some video of this and I've got some really nice close-ups of the finished edges of both Trivex and Poly. Thing is that we have got Santinelli's absolute state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line Lex 1200. So absolutely everything you throw at it comes out looking beautiful. I'd give Trivex about an A-, where Poly is a B+. Trivex just simply finishes a little bit nicer. Now, as far as the actual physical act of cutting those materials, man, Trivex is some quirky stuff. We're working on a separate video for that, but that is for another time. Again, super important, Trivex is rather tricky to edge, but there are some things you can do to make that better. Basically, this oil boils down to when pretty counts, use Trivex. We are told by the industry that Trivex is the very best thing for drill mounts. Probably is, can't say for sure. But here are some results of a little drill test that I did. I went online and I found a really good article on the best practices to use when drilling the two materials. So what I'm going to do is the exact opposite. Rather than have a really slow, methodical, almost like a hand drilling speed, I'm going to be running this thing at 540 RPM. It said be sure you use very, very sharp drill bits. Well, I work with metal a lot, so I can guarantee you that my drill bits are not all that sharp. It says be sure to try to let the material cool by drilling in, releasing, drilling in, releasing. I'm just going to be running these drill bits right on through this material. I knew there was one more thing I wanted to say here. The way I'm doing this, I'm going to generate a lot of heat, and heat damage to the material during the drilling process does not show up immediately. So to be fair, that is going to create an issue down the road. So what we're really looking at here today, the results, are going to be the quality of the holes that we are drilling. Here's a close-up of the Trivex lens, and we're going to take a closer look at the hole indicated by the red arrow. Here's a close-up of the Poly lens, and we'll look at the hole indicated by the arrow. And what I want you to look really closely at the wall of the hole. See how much cleaner it is on the Trivex? And then look at the Poly, and see how it kind of chews the material rather than cuts nice and clean? That's really the big difference there. I would give Trivex drilling an A, Poly an A-, much for the same reasons that I gave those scores, similar scores, to edging. Trivex simply turns out cleaner. It has a more finished, sharp, crisp, clean edge drill hole pattern than polycarbonate does. Trivex, depending on who's making it, has an index of refraction of about 1.53. Poly, pretty consistent, 1.586. The higher the index of refraction, the thinner the lens should be. So Poly should be our winner here. Let's find out if that's true. This is what we're going to do. We're going to measure 3 spots on each of these 4 lenses and see what we come up with. And I'm going to kind of do a little fast forward thing here for you. So just bear with me. We're going to be popping the numbers up as I go along. Then we'll do an average and post the results. Here are the results of our averages of the measurements around the edge of each of those lenses. The thinnest one came in as a Poly, which you might expect, at 4.96. Then we had a tie, Poly and Trivex, 5.11, and then one of the Trivex was at 5.22. A difference of only 0.26 millimeters, again in a full-size blank. That's not what we're selling. We're selling these. So again, just like weight, really, this is really negligible, especially in these bread and butter prescriptions. Not really going to make a difference in that overall edge thickness. This was a truly startling one. That's me going, you know, all you ever hear, you know, polycarbonate, safe for kids, super impact resistant, safety, bulletproof, Trivex equal to or better than polycarbonate. Well, it turns out that in reality, the impact resistance of poly or Trivex depends solely about the coating or coatings that it gets. Be prepared for a bit of a shock. In case you haven't figured it out by now, I'm just a big kid, so I still love hitting things with a hammer to see what happens. Here we have a stock, single vision, uncut, -2 Trivex, and a stock, single vision, uncut, -2 poly. Okay, well, there's a, well, let's just say a huge surprise. Trivex, nothing. This particular series of polycarbonate lenses, you know, shattered like a piece of glass. And one more time on the Trivex, just for good measure. And because no real impact test is complete without firearms, we took these lenses out to the range to see how they would hold up under fire. For my first test, I fired a .177 lead pellet at both a poly and a Trivex lens. As you can see, the lens made of Trivex shattered, and the lens made of poly actually repelled the pellet. After that, I moved to a .22 caliber bullet at a range of approximately 25 yards. I only shot the poly since the Trivex shattered in the last test. Here you can see the bullet did pass through the lens, yet the lens deformed and actually reclosed, and it didn't shatter. For impact resistance, all I can say for myself is, wow. I did not expect the Trivex lens to shatter when I hit it with a pellet at 10 meters. I did not expect one of the poly lenses to shatter when I hit it with a hammer. Those results made us do some more digging, and we ended up talking with the companies that manufacture the material, manufacture the lenses, and manufacture the coatings that go on the lenses. I'm going to paraphrase what we got back from those companies and what we found online in 3 parts. Please pay attention here, because this is really, really important. Differences in the manufacturing process, curing times, curing temperatures, and mold release agents can play a key part in final lens performance. That is why labs have a challenge on their hands. If they assume a lens is the same across all manufacturers and they expect it to perform the same way with the same coating stack, it simply may not behave the same. Labs specifically have to test each manufacturer of the lens and each specific coating for impact performance. They cannot assume company A's lenses will behave the same as company B's lenses, even with the same type of monomer and coating stack. 1. And if you think you missed something, just rewind and listen to it again. There's a lot to take in there. Trivex claims to be as strong or stronger than polycarbonate in impact resistance. This is not the case when the product is scratch coated or AR coated. An abrasion-resistant coating is going to be harder and more brittle than the lens in order to be abrasion-resistant. This makes the lens easier to break due to that coating. The average coating reduces the strength 45%, and the average AR coating reduces the strength another 20% for a total of 65%. Wow. And this one, nice, short, sweet. Coatings may alter the impact resistance and overall performance of any lens material. Any lens material. So think for yourself and think about those statements. And again, if you missed something, rewind it, listen to it again. And because I am just a big kid at heart, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. One of the categories that's always included whenever there's a side-by-side or a lens material overview is UV protection. And Trivex is shown as having 100% and Poly is shown as having 100%. Let's see if that's true. And first up is a Poly lens, which blocks 97% or allows 3% of UV light through. And then Trivex, which blocks 100% or allows none of the UV light through. For UV, our quick and easy one, both are rated at 100, but would I sell Poly as 100% UV protection? No, I guess I'd sell it as 97%. Still passes, right? Another one of those things that's always mentioned in lens material brochures is the tintability or tinting capability of the lens. And I guarantee, I admit, you can go to my website and you'll see Trivex, great, easy to tint, nothing to it, A+. Poly, can't be tinted, D-, F material, doesn't work. Or is it like a lot of these other things? Is it really all about the coating? Let's find out. Now, of course, Laramy-K is an independent wholesale optical lab. We do a whole lot of tinting, years and years of experience. And I'm going to let you just look at those for a moment or two and let you think about it, because I want you to try to predict which one is which. Made your decision? Good, because you're probably wrong. This, believe it or not, is a stock Trivex lens, one just like we pulled out of the envelopes for the other tests, put into the tint tank, same one as these, for 10 full minutes. Nothing. Basically, zip. This was a stock polycarbonate lens, dumped into the tank for 10 minutes. Not a tintable poly, just an ordinary stock poly lens. This was a surfaced Trivex. This is a surfaced Poly. So to my eye, I think our darkest is probably this Poly, the surfaced one, followed by Trivex, followed by a stock Poly, and then followed by what basically is nothing in this particular Trivex. For tinting, it's just like impact resistance. It all comes down to what coating is on the lens. If you want a great polycarbonate with a sunglass tint, Seiko makes a great tintable poly lens. Other than that, you're going to have to go to your lab and you're going to have to tell them exactly what material you want and tell them that you want it tinted, and they will put on the appropriate coating to allow that to happen. In the past, in my head, I had Trivex being fairly expensive and having somewhat limited availability. It's nice to be right once in a while. Clear polycarbonate, you have 11 choices, a single one in Trivex. You have a low price of $344, an average of $6. That's pretty cheap. You can make some money there. Clear Trivex is going at $22. In AR coated, you have 18 choices in polycarbonate, 7 in Trivex, more than double. And in polarized polycarbonate, you have 7 choices to 1 in Trivex with a low of 18 for that and an average for the Trivex of 31. Trivex, availability maybe around a C, polycarbonate A, tons and tons of every style imaginable available. Price, yes, Trivex consistently runs more expensive than Poly. As I mentioned in the introduction to this piece, I was genuinely startled at the results of some of the tests. It turns out, and this is really, really important, that unless you know the material, the process, and the coating, you cannot predict how that lens will perform under different circumstances. Really important. And I just want to leave you with this. Before you go selling either material, Trivex or poly, as having specific characteristics, impact resistance, chemical resistance, tintability, just think twice. And that's where I'm going to leave this. Be careful out there. You don't know how these materials will perform until you know the coatings that are on them. Think about it. Price and availability. I knew in my own head in the past, I thought Trivex these tests. I have no vested interest here. Style or a drill. For price and availability, hey, it's nice to be once right.